Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with a weekly garden tour. I'm a few days early because the forecast is so amazing right now, and I think that we are going to have quite a lot of rain this weekend. And I wanted to start out here at the neighborhood entry where you can see we've got lots of daffodils blooming, but I was just doing some evaluations on, weeding and maybe removing finally all of this super ugly liriope, and actually coming up with a plan to put in a bunch of native shrubs and grasses into this border. We'll still have room to do some annual seeding, but I'd love for more of this square footage to be devoted to native plants that require very little maintenance. The great news is I'm going to be back at Carolina Native Nursery in just a couple of days. We're starting a huge collaboration for 2023, and they're really stoked to have some of their plants right here in our neighborhood entry, so when people come visit our gardens, they'll know that they are in the right place. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this camera around. I'm going to show you here, and then we'll walk back to my gardens and you can see all that is growing and blooming as we've had extremely mild temperatures here in the middle of February. Well, it's really interesting. Along the borders, edges, I've got a good stand of crimson clover and bachelor buttons that are all self-sown. And the cold that we had at the holidays definitely did a number on the daikon radish, but you can see their roots are still in there. That is such a cute little thing. I'll put that back in and it can just decompose in place. We do have some summer stuff to still cut back. This is remnants of an old zinnia, and you can see cars are always driving in this bed. This is why I've predominantly done it as annuals, because it doesn't hurt my feelings as much. I think it's mostly trucks with trailers is actually what causes the trouble. We do have some larkspur well established in here. I don't see any poppies, which is a shame, but sometimes that's how it goes. And then I was referring to the ugly liriope, and I did not plant this. And honestly, it takes up so much square footage. It always gets burnt from cold. And it really is sort of a pointless exotic plant that I don't like at all. Now here we've got some tithonia. There's still, there's seeds in here. I need to gather some of these seeds from my own garden. This is very good to see that this has seeds. And then a lot of weeding to be done. We have some of the worst weeds up here. That Velcro weed right here is a real nightmare. Best to get this out now. But then we do have some native panicums already planted. And in this center area here and along this edge is where I'd really like to concentrate native grasses and shrubs. Obviously, out towards the sign and closer to the road, we need to keep the plants really low because we don't want to block people's visibility. But in the middle of this bed, I think we can do a much better job and have better ground plane coverage by adding some woody material. So you might be wondering, why does Bree maintain the neighborhood entry? And it's an interesting thing. We disbanded the HOA in this neighborhood, so we don't have a means of collecting money to pay for a professional service, but we have the neighborhood entryway that the builder put in. So somebody's got to do it, and I'm the resident horticulturalist. And I've been maintaining it now for, I think, probably close to a decade. And it's always been a lot of fun because typically the neighborhood kids like to get involved because, frankly, they're really the only ones who spend any time at the entryway because it's where the school bus picks them up and drops them off. And since so many of them are now involved in the native planting here at the Carolina Garden House, we all were talking about it the other day, and it just kind of was like, well, why don't we put some more permanent plantings in and make it a little lower maintenance than it's been. So I love that that is the direction that the next generation wants to go in, and I will always follow their lead. Well, right now the Carolina Garden House is not rented through Airbnb, so that's exciting because it means we get to use it. And we're actually hosting our dear friend Aaron Weston's birthday party here tomorrow. So I went ahead and made some floating flower arrangements. And this time I kept them on the porches because we have so much rain in the forecast, and the rain definitely makes the floating flower arrangements, well, it makes them not last as long. So I went ahead and stashed them on the porches so that they will be longer lasting. And hopefully you have been watching all of my videos, so you'll know that my urban apples have arrived, and this is basically the next phase for building new beds here on this property. I've got the soil cube on order. It is coming on Monday, so we will be building new beds very, very soon to get these columnar apples planted, and we are going to do a big grass installation at their base. Aiden and I are both very inspired by the plantings at Hoffman Nursery, and so we're gonna try and recreate what they've done. Behind me here in the pollinator pocket garden, everything's looking great. You can see this is really the basil rosette stage of all these perennials. Everything is, you know, sort of slowly coming back to life. I haven't done any major cutbacks in here, though I could really at any moment. And I'm really pleased to see a lot of California poppies coming up in here. And then all of those violas that I sowed way back when, in like August, they're actually filling in all over this bed. And you can see there's quite a lot blooming right here. All the containers over here are great. I can't believe how well the greens are doing. And look at those broccolis. Aren't they gorgeous? Covering them last week was a very good decision. And here's another floating arrangement that I really love. I love the pale hellebores with the yellow violas. I love this combination. I just finished writing an article for Triangle Gardener about the shrub layer of plants here at the Carolina Garden House, and everything is looking great. And yesterday, the Casper crew, Madeline and Charlie, came over and they wanted a mulch, so we got 2 yards of mulch put out in like less than a half an hour and got this shrub border really cleaned up. Now our plan is to actually extend this bed, make this bed a little bit wider, and then we're actually going to do some selections, cutbacks, and make it so that you can actually walk through this border from one side to the other. So we have a little bit of work to do in prepping this, but I'm excited to expand that border and put in a bunch of grasses. And you see all of these containers are doing well. I'm really glad I did cover everything because, well, you could see the poppies did not have any damage from last week's cold. I'm also pleased to show you, since I'm standing here, a lot of poppy action. These are pots that I did not do anything except toss seed into the pots. Like I mean, you can see where like the Camellias stems are still there from summer. I didn't disturb the soil at all. I just tossed the seeds on top and they are germinating. Well, over here in the driveway bed, you can see David's been working on the Land Rover, getting the hard top installed, and the cats are helping. And I've got some more beautiful floating flower arrangements here. And I really cannot get over how amazing these winter interest foodscape pots look. Is broccoli not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? This just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Every day I'm like, oh my God, I cannot wait to eat it. Of course, the kale is absolutely gorgeous. And Reginald says hello to everyone. He is also getting very large. I just still don't think he's Maine Coon, but he is not a tiny little baby cat anymore. He should be turning 1 sometime in April. And this pot, you see why I love violas so much. They are just so incredible, so floriferous, really cold hardy. And I like this combination a lot. You can see the snapdragons will be blooming soon, and Of course, you can't go wrong with Swiss chard, red romaine lettuce, and that Dutch curled kale. And at the base of this bed, you'll see the poppies that were sown in early January are growing really fast. So these are California poppies, the Schultzia, and you can really see that cut leaf. And then mixed in with them is the Reese poppy. And this is going to be incredibly beautiful with all of this in flower. I know it can be hard to imagine that from this something magical will occur in the spring, but truly it is. To be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for updates. And another edge that I'm really happy with is this edge of onions. See, it's just bright and colorful. We've frequently harvested the foliage to include in stir fries. And you know, it's just a really great edge that also helps deter the animals. And my goodness, have we ever had a lot of deer action. Of course, I don't have my Orbit Yard Enforcer hooked up, though I could right now because we don't have any freezing weather in the forecast. Overall, everything here is looking good. You can see the blueberries are already starting to bud up, and I hope that they won't flower and then all of a sudden we get super cold and the flowers burn off, because that will reduce the fruit set. But you know, that's what happens in this climate where, you know, you have like a week of no freezing and like we're like in the 70s today. The plants are definitely tricked into thinking it's time to get started for spring. In this bed, I wanted to show you two camellias that I don't frequently show because they're still small, but they're wonderful. This is Roma Resorta, a really cool Italian variety from the 1800s. And over here is Stellar Sunrise. And this is a really awesome formal double. This is the solid pink of April Dawn. And these are part of the April series, which are, you know, cold hardy for zone 6 from Camellia Forest. Really happy to see all these flower buds. There are so many camellias in bloom right now. I can't tell you how many neighbors have asked how I already have a red bud in bloom. And of course, that's Pink Panther, Prunus mume, and it's always the latest one to flower here in my garden. All the other Prunus mumes have been finished for about 2 weeks, but that one is still holding on to blooms. Hopefully you watched my tours of the J.C. Ralston Arboretum. The first of the two, I primarily focused on Prunus varieties because all the cherries are starting to bloom right now, and it's really exciting. Of course, the ranunculus brazen hussy is somewhat of a cedar, so be warned, but it is a cheerful flower, and I do like using these in floating arrangements. That's certainly been blooming its head off, and lots of seedlings are germinating in here now. You can see, I believe all of these are actually larkspur, but I'll know for sure once true leaves form. But I think these cotyledon leaves look a lot like those. And you can see once the true leaves come out, they're pretty easy to identify. So this should be a pretty dynamic display. I see lots of poppies germinating in the open space. So I'm very encouraged. This is always a border that's really central to the spring open garden display. And I was worried for a while that it was going to be very boring, but I think now it's going to look awesome. And just standing out here, the smell of the Edgeworthia is really starting to become pronounced, and the flowers are opening really quite rapidly. You can see how they just continue to expand. And, you know, many are almost fully open. Usually they like turn more upright than they have this year. We'll check the other Edgeworthias and see their status as well. Well, there is no denying the impact that Camellia Crimson Candles will create for a landscape. I mean, look at all of these flowers. I'm so glad I covered this last week because a lot of these blooms would have been damaged if I hadn't put that soil cube bag over top. And oh my gosh, I just don't know that there is anything more spectacular than a Crimson Candles camellia in full bloom. Now, in saying that, I think one of my new favorite varieties is Irrational Exuberance. And for one thing, I love the name. But this has been blooming since the fall. I think I started collecting flowers off of this in November. And this is a kind of a newer variety that Bobby Green from Fairhope, Alabama introduced, and it's really a terrific plant. I highly recommend it. And another plant that Bobby introduced here is Igao 3 Seasons. And this is one that I love. I love these very sort of pink, soft pink to white blooms. The one thing about this one, the flowers are actually really hard to pluck off to use in floating arrangements. So you have to be really gentle when you're trying to extract the blooms. Whereas on some of the others, you could literally just twist them off pretty hard and they pop right off. Now, another favorite is in flower back here, kind of on our pathway over to Chris and Prudy's yard. And this is Freedom Bell. And Freedom Bell is a really extraordinary flower that, well, I just think it's really enchanting. I love the color. I love the semi-double flowers, and really nice, easy growing habit here. And you may have noticed some double hellebores in floating arrangements. And of course, they're way back here in the woods. I don't get back here every day. So that's really part of why I love to harvest these for the arrangements, so that I'll actually see them and get to really enjoy them to their fullest. Well, believe it or not, it's actually a lot drier today than it has been. A few days ago, it was standing water to like over your ankles. And that is part of the reality of living on the edge of a swamp. Of course, all the plants back here seem to enjoy the extra wet conditions, and Edgeworthia is a plant natively that grows on edges of stream banks, so it definitely likes the extra moisture. And you can see this Gold Rush is also not quite in full bloom, but definitely more flowers are open compared to a week ago. And the big Edgeworthia. These flowers are definitely the most advanced. And oh, it just smells so good. Oh Lord. These are of course where I've been harvesting a lot of blooms for the floating arrangements. We are basically getting into peak Edgeworthia time, and I'm enjoying every sunny moment of it. Well, as we come over here, the Mount Aso willow is starting to really bud up. This is a plant that I actually won at a Master Gardener event in Princeton, New Jersey, I think in 2019. I've always wanted it. It's not a plant that's very common in the Southeast, at least, but I'm not sure why, because it does do well. I mean, you could see it. It's certainly not suffering in any capacity. I love bringing it in to use in cut arrangements at this time of year, and it does root really easily. So I highly recommend Mount Aso, the Japanese pink pussy willow. Poppy alert. They are everywhere, and everything has grown so much in the last week. So you could see self-sown poppies versus seeds that I sowed, I believe, around December 22nd. And in these big 100-gallon root pouches, really great ground plane coverage with poppies here. I'm really pleased. This is going to be a beautiful border, thanks in part to all the poppies that have self-sown in the walkway and along the bottle edges. And then you can also see tons of poppies growing in the beds themselves. So I'm really pleased to see all of this green. Now hopefully everything will be in bloom for the spring open garden. And be sure to get your calendars marked for the Spring Open Garden, which is Saturday, May 13th from noon to 4 p.m. And of course, here is a preview of some of the plants that we will be having for sale. I am putting together an awesome collection of primarily landscape plugs of grasses, sedges, and rushes, also flowering perennials. And then I am planning to have a really cool collection of native trees and shrubs on hand that I'm going to pick up from Carolina Native Nursery. So this is going to be a must visit open garden this year, really special, one day only. I am not opening a garden center, so just really want to give everybody the motivation to make it out for this event. It's, I think, going to be a really extraordinary day, rain or shine, free, no registration. And just to show you some of the other self-sown poppies that are absolutely enormous. I can't believe how big these are. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if these bloomed like in March. It's crazy. I don't think I've ever had poppies this big at this stage in February. And same goes for all those poppies that self-sowed in this pathway. And everything that we sowed during the seed class is growing well. You can see poppies and lettuce is sort of popping up all through. And the arugula has definitely recovered from the holiday freeze. And all of the pots in this area look great because they have had the protection from these burlap sacks on top of tomato cages. And everything through here is looking great. I still cannot get over how this little bit of fencing has basically eliminated the deer browse in this bed. And, you know, the barley is recovering, and so is the crimson clover. All the poppies, all the garlic, everything are growing really strong in these borders. And you can see just another great example. We did cover this last week when the temperatures got really cold and nothing was damaged at all. So these poppies and lettuce and tulips really look great. So this border, you can see daffodils are in bloom. Of course, lots and lots of poppies. Look at all those. Honestly, I think I'm gonna have more poppies this year than ever before. You could see the phlox, since we cut it back a week ago, is really starting to actively grow. I do have a lot of weeding to do still, you know, such is life. I'm hoping that these cabbages will actually start to head, as I eat a lot of cabbage and I would like to be able to harvest some food soon. And I love that these violas are really starting to come into action. And over through this border, obviously lots of larkspur, more California poppies. Overall, I think it's all looking great. And if you watched, hopefully, my J.C. Ralston tour, you saw there were lots of magnolias in bloom. And here I have a Magnolia stellata, the star magnolia, starting to flower as well. Unfortunately, the blooms are way above my head, so I can't get any close-up shots. And this is definitely the time of year where the north side of the garden is kind of at its most interesting. See lots of hellebores in bloom. These have opened in the last 24 hours because I actually harvested every single open flower yesterday to make floating flower arrangements. And a few camellias over here that haven't started flowering. You can see Jack's back there doesn't have any open blooms yet. And over here, Royal Velvet hasn't started to open yet either. These are like basically the last two in my collection. You can see colors starting to show on the buds, but nothing flowering yet. So that's great. That gives me something to look forward to. But I have to acknowledge that this October affair has been providing color and beautiful flowers for so many months. This is really and truly a standout plant. I mean, I know I show this basically every week, but that's because it's so pretty. Look at that perfect flower. And there are so many flower buds still to open. So if you want a camellia that's gonna provide you with color for like 4+ months, Camellia japonica October Affair is the one that I would highly recommend. Zone 7 through 9. And remember, don't hate me for being in Zone 7. I did move here with great intention from Zone 5, and I just can't say enough about how wonderful it is to live in a climate where you have so many plants that are winter active. A lot of times, especially when I'm giving presentations, you know, I will tell people, like, take the summers off and take advantage of the winter climate here, because it's far more pleasant. You know, June, July, August, September can be really hard to be outside working in the garden in this climate. But, well, as you can see, it's a 70-degree day in the middle of February. This is the time of year to be outside enjoying the beautiful plants that you can cultivate. And across the front here, you could see that Lindera salicifolia. You know, this is a big part of why it's desirable. It's because of this tardily deciduous habit, holding on to all of its leaves in this kind of tawny brown state. I really like it. I think it's a really terrific plant. I'm excited to have Lindera included in the next door property, the native benzoin. This is an Asian species that I think is also well worth growing. And at the base of that was a big fire ant mound. You can see, I don't think that we got rid of the fire ants. We treated the fire ants, but look at all the poppies that are germinating in that loose soil. This is going to be really quite extraordinary, and I've got some weeding to do. This is a plant that I just cannot seem to get a handle of. This is a native Veronica, but not a good Veronica. It's super weedy, and you can see it just covers the ground. And, you know, I mean, it's fine if you're not trying to grow anything else, then it's fine. But, like, I'm trying to grow larkspur and poppies, so I don't want this hogging all the resources and shading those more desirable plants out. If only I could train Sophia to weed. Well, this morning I looked out and I was like, holy smokes, I think the grains grew like 3 inches overnight. Probably because it was really warm last night and we got some rain, and they literally did. You can see some are already like more than a foot tall. So it's just everything that I love about greens. Bright green, you know, in the middle of all this dormant centipede turf. I'm so pleased to see this, of course, was completely planted by a school group from Cary Academy back in November. And hopefully they're going to come back out for a visit so they can see the fruits of their labor later on this spring. Well, you can see that border is what we mulched, and it looks so clean and tidy, and I got a bunch of the shrubs cut back, and I just think it looks so much better. And here in the front, you see we've got our first daffodil in bloom, and all of these self-sown cottage garden plants are just, they're getting bigger by the day. It's just so amazing. So we'll go over what we have here. We've got bachelor buttons, we've got poppies, larkspur. Here, of course, are the fava beans that I've been experimenting with. And I did weed this a few weeks ago, and for the most part, it's looking pretty weed-free. So I'm really pleased with this border. And Cubby wants to say hi to everybody. Cubby's losing weight really rapidly, and we've had other kitties in the past that have had these same symptoms. So we're just enjoying every day that we have with him. He's such a special kitty. First, he was my nursery cat at Camellia Forest, and he's lived a really great life, and we love him so much. So send him good vibes. We hope to at least have a few more weeks with Cubby, but you can see he's lost a lot of weight really rapidly, and I was really disappointed that our vet was super dismissive when I took him in. So I'm definitely planning to find a new veterinarian because I didn't appreciate at all how they treated me or him. Didn't really acknowledge my concerns, and well, you know, just not okay. You can see he's still enjoying the garden. I just saw a frog or a toad jump in, and he does enjoy taking a drink from this duck pond here. Always hard to say goodbye to your beloved pets. But he's not in any pain right now, so we're just, like I said, enjoying every moment that we have with him. Well, everyone, I hope that you've enjoyed today's weekly garden tour. This is a very exciting time of year. Of course, I am getting ready to start traveling for my profession yet again. And I have, I think, 10 consecutive weeks of travel ahead. So I will continue to try and have videos up on a regular basis, but know that I am juggling a lot right now. But I'm really excited to get back on the road and get to meet people in person at live events. It's, you know, been weird ever since 2020 when everything shut down, and this is really the first year where my travel schedule is kind of like back to pre-pandemic schedules. It's a bit overwhelming, but I'm taking it day by day, and I'm just super grateful for all the opportunities. And I know once I get back in the groove of flying every week, it'll be totally fine. Fingers crossed. But I do look forward to sharing another update with all of you right here from my home garden in Central North Carolina, Zone 7. And I'm wishing you all the very best and have a very happy and safe Valentine's Day. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.